Yes, you lovely people, if you're not already, make sure you give us a follow over on Spotify. Richard Lee, he is now known as basically the super goalkeeping agent. If a goalkeeper moves, he's normally done the deal. When I'm telling you this figure and then you say, I don't think they're going to do that.
Had it have gone through, you would have been comfortably, far and away, the best paid number 3 in the universe.
This feeling just went goom down into my belly, right? I've got goosebumps because I've just remembered it there.
So in my group, I then sent a text saying, this isn't done until it's done.
Really?
I sensed it.
Just filled me with dread. Hello everybody, welcome to another episode of the Fozcast. I've got Richard Lee. Why are you giggling when I did the intro then? You did? You just giggled. I'm keeping that in, I don't care. If you watched my retirement podcast that I made a few weeks ago, you would have maybe remembered that I referenced an agent who was doing the deal on my behalf. That is a guy called Richard Lee. He is now known as basically the super goalkeeping agent. If any goalkeeper moves, especially in the EFL, right? Especially in the EFL, if a goalkeeper moves, he's normally done the deal. He does all of them nowadays. And he was the guy that was in charge of my deal going through, basically, the doomed deal to Newcastle. So I thought it would be a good pod to get you here. We've got an agent on you, the first agent we've ever had. And I think it'd be good to talk about not only the Newcastle deal, how you saw it from your point of view, but also just the inner workings of how an agent operates, his day-to-day, the behind the scenes, how it all kind of gets put together, basically. Before we get into it, as usual, though, we want to shout out our boy.
Call out, Craig Dawson.
Craig Dawson. Rich, can you just say, Craig, come on.
Yeah, come on, Craig.
Dawes, mate, come on.
Get on the podcast.
Get on the podcast. He was in the starting lineup, actually, for West Ham against, who was it, Wolves the other day. So you're riding high, mate. Good 2-0 win, clean sheet. Now's the time, mate. Stop back in on the way home from London and come and do the podcast.
Dawson got Bruno Lage the sack, didn't he, basically?
He basically did, yeah. He basically did. And also, if you are listening to us on Spotify, do not forget, though, you can now actually watch us, yeah? We are a vodcast, not just a podcast. You can watch us.
You ever heard of that? A vodcast.
No, that's what it is, though, isn't it? Yeah,
it is.
So you'd be able to watch us in all our glory. I am, in fact, wearing a lovely Mexico shirt today to represent the green of the Fozcast and Spotify, obviously. But right, let's get into it. Stop preambling, okay? Richard Lee, how are you, mate?
I'm very well. Yourself?
Yeah, I'm incredible. Right, I want to take you back, okay, to about
the most miserable moment of your life.
Yeah, a day that
biggest high, the lowest low.
Yeah, you were not happy. At the end of the day, you were not happy, and we'll come on to this, though, okay? So. I want to set the scene for you, all right? It's about, 12 o'clock in the afternoon?
Yep.
Maybe a little bit. Yeah, about 12 o'clock in the afternoon. I get a phone call. The phone rings. Ben, Fozzy, it's Rich. Ooh, okay. I know Rich is an agent, and I still haven't retired from football, so straight away.
How do you know Rich? Let's just put a bit of context around it, because this isn't just any agent. You've known Rich for a very, very long time.
Yeah, I've known Rich for a very long time. So we knew each other at Watford. You were a goalkeeper. The first season I was at Watford, actually, you were out on loan, wasn't you, to Blackburn and stuff, yeah? And then the second season you came back, you were my number 2 goalkeeper. And we've kept in touch ever since, haven't we? Great, good friend. What a guy, by the way, Richard Lee. Lovely bloke, honestly. Really lovely bloke.
Is there a red wine stain on your seat?
One night in particular.
You spilt red wine on Kate's sofa?
No, he didn't spill red wine.
Oh, no.
It was a bad night. Let's not elaborate too much from there, but has she forgiven me yet?
Probably not.
No, probably not. No, this is the kind of thing that leaves a deep scar.
Sorry.
Yeah. So we had a night out. We're getting off track, but I don't care. But we had a night out, good night out. And you were sleeping on my sofa, my cream sofa.
Really cream.
One of John Lewis's finest as well. And yeah, you managed to chuck up the contents of a red wine bottle all over the bad boy. Don't worry about it, though. Forget about it.
Perfect way to start this show.
He didn't even offer to pay for the dry cleaning or anything, mate. Nothing, right? Scumbag. Anyway, so yeah, I'm setting the scene. So that's how we know you, okay? So now, obviously, I'm proud of everything you're doing now. You've branched off into the agency world and you're absolutely killing it. Representing the goalkeepers as well. I love it. So anyway, I'll take you back to this 12 o'clock, right? So I've set the scene for you. Yep. You tell me your side of it, your perspective of how this day started.
So that day, for me, I was flying to Dublin. I had to go and meet a potential client. So I was flying out there, due to go there, and then flying back later that evening. So that was my day. So I'm literally on the runway. So you don't know this.
Yeah, I don't know this part, no.
I was on the runway. I got a bit of intel that Caldalo had gone down. for Newcastle. Injured. And I'd heard that it was quite a serious one. And so realistically, they're going to need to bring someone in. So I knew the flight was an hour or so. I had to get in contact with you before I got on the plane to be like, look, is it all right if I make this call on your behalf, etc., which obviously you said yes to. In the meantime, also sending a couple of messages out elsewhere to sort of lay the foundation. Then I'm in the air for an hour. I couldn't get reception, obviously, because it was a Ryanair flight. They don't have Wi-Fi on those flights. So I'm just waiting for it to land. So the moment it lands, I can then get on the case and try to see if there's something there, at which point, obviously, I heard that Newcastle... It was interesting, actually, Pickford went down the same day as well. So there was Everton, Newcastle. I learned early on that Newcastle had more of a chance than Everton, so it was a case of, right, could there be an interest in Ben Foster? I then get the call back to say that there could be.
So when these goalies go down injured, right, because you've got such a good name in the game now already, right, you're like the go-to goalkeeper agent, basically. So when a goalkeeper goes down injured... How does it work? Who is it? From the football club? Could it be another agent?
Anyone.
Could be absolutely
Could be anyone. It's just one now that there's a couple of other guys that I work with where it's effectively a big jigsaw. The goalkeeping world is a big jigsaw. You see one move from somewhere, you already know they're going to need somebody else. And then I guess where the skill in what we do is having a good idea as to who fits who. So already for you, like I know we spoke about it in the summer, I knew the kind of teams that would fit you. So you're essentially just waiting for that opportunity to come up. So the moment that happened with Carl Darlow, I knew that the out-of-contract goalkeepers at the time were you, Loris Karius, Nyland, Westwood. So I knew the list. And with the greatest respect to those guys, all fantastic goalkeepers, my gut said that you would have been top of that list.
So at this moment then, you have to start kind of like looking at it from every angle. So the first port call is to me to say, Fozzy, are you interested? So how does that call go? What are you asking? What sort of questions are you asking?
So interesting, because I did it to maybe a week before, and they didn't materialise, the ones that I said, because it's always got to be you first, because if you say no, there's no point in then me getting the club excited. So the moment you said, go on, play it out, see what it looks like, then it's the call to the club. And in fairness to them, they came back pretty quickly and said, of course, look, if that's a possibility, looks like we're going to need someone, this is what it would look like. And they obviously, without, won't give away too much information, facts and figures, but they then made it clear that, of course, look, Ben Foster would be perfect to come in. You would have been, had you have gone, really good number 2 in terms of you as a lad. Because this is the other thing, it's not just about you as the goalkeeper, it's then the whole profile. So what are you like as a character, which again, the agent can help portray who you are as a character. And if they've got trust in the agent to give truth, then I'm painting a picture to them as to what you're like. Let's be honest, most people know what you're like now, which is kind of a good thing. It makes it easier. So you tick the box in terms of you as a profile going in, being a good person around the place. Obviously, in terms of you playing, still comfortably play at that level. So for them, it ticked all the boxes, and they were very quick to then say, we'll look to do something. This is our initial offer. So
the questions I remember you asking straight away were, right, is this something you want to do? He said, so I remember you saying, think about it. It's Newcastle. It's a long way away, right? It's not the sort of place that you can just drive to and then drive home. It's 4 hours away from your house. So that was the first question I remember you asking. Is it doable? And I said, I think so. I think so. Yeah, I think so. I said, but the basically it came down to what the package would look like. And I gave you a figure of a weekly wage that I thought, do you know what? If they come to this and they match it, it not only shows me that they're obviously going to be willing to pay the wage, but they really want me. And I think that's a bit that's kind of quite nice, isn't it? Do you know what I mean? When I'm telling you this figure and then you say, I remember you saying, I don't think they're going to do that.
Well, do you know what it was? And this is where it's interesting, because I saw the way the day play out. Now, realistically, with the greatest of respect, you would have gone there as a 2 initially, but when Carl Darlow's fit, there's a good chance he goes back as a 2. So effectively, the contract was for a number 3 goalkeeper who's going to be a 2 realistically for a short period of time. I say this, and me knowing you, by that point you're probably number 1 and you probably played 10 games by that point. But realistically, that was what the contract was. So had it have gone through, you would have been comfortably far and away the best paid number 3 in the universe. So that's why I said to you initially, like, okay, that's a really big figure for what this role is.
And I said that's fine. Yeah, I understand that. I understand I'm asking a lot, but I think for me, because with everything we've got going on with the podcast, we do the football fill-in football show, everything else that I've got used to doing over the last 3 months since my Watford career, since my Watford contract ended, I've got actually into a bit of a groove of really enjoying what I'm doing. Do you know what I mean? I'll be dead honest with you. I'm not missing football one little bit, am I? What we're doing, Tom, is like really enjoyable. Every day seems to be something new. So when I threw that figure out there, I was thinking, do you know what? I don't think they're going to do this. I don't think they'll go to this, right? And I almost kind of, in the back of my head, thought, that's cool, because then I haven't got to make a decision then. It's like, it just didn't work out. It is what it is. So I told you the figure, and you've gone, well, I'll go back to them. I don't think they're going to do that. I went, yeah, that's cool, mate. It's fine. If they can't, not a problem. No skin.
You're in a massive position of power, because ultimately you've got nothing to lose.
Yeah.
Because you would do what we do. And like you say, you're a busy guy now.
Yeah.
Like with the podcast, the show, 2, 3, 4 days a week, easy peasy.
Yeah, for sure.
So you're in a real nice position going into this. It wasn't even a negotiation from you, was it?
The other part to this as well, and where your hand was even stronger, was the fact that, of course, the window wasn't open. So it is now. You suddenly, the moment September 1st came around, Ben Foster, as a goalkeeper's strength in the market became that much more.
Yeah,
because
sure, yeah.
it wasn't like, I don't know, had it been deadline day, and let's say we'd have had that initial phone call, and they'd have realised what your figure was, they might have turned around and said, well, look, do you know what, we might as well go and buy such and such, and maybe gone and spent a transfer fee on somebody else, of a different profile.
Who might have a bit of a resale value or anything like that kind of thing.
So all of a sudden, you were a very small number of goalkeepers were available at this time.
Yeah. So anyway, you've got. So at this point, I've told you what I want.
Yeah.
You then have gone back to Newcastle and gone, right, boom, Ben's interested. Yeah. He wants to do it. This is what he wants. Yeah. What do Newcastle say here?
At that point, they said that's a bit heavy.
Yeah.
A bit heavy. So then, in fairness, we were talking back and forth, because again, this is where the role of the agent is, right? You need to know where the client sits, and you want the client to be happy, but then similarly, you want to work with the club. So it's that, it's kind of finding that middle ground. In this case, early on, we had to let them know there isn't really middle ground. It's not one where sometimes in a negotiation, you might start a little bit high, knowing that you give yourself a bit of wiggle room. With this, I knew very early on with you, it was, I think even if they were a penny below, you wouldn't have.
Yeah, sure.
So Rich, at that point, do you lay your card on the table and say, listen, this isn't really a negotiation for Ben. That's the number, and he's quite happy to walk away. How do you position it?
Yeah, you do, but then similarly, naturally, they'll want to come back with ideas, and they were really creative.
Yeah, they were.
In fairness, they were trying to think of different ideas, and so it was one that I would then bring them back to Ben. In my head, knowing, and again, I guess where people know who you are, what you are, how you are, it's one where it made it a little bit easier as well to be like, look, Ben is where he is. There isn't really going to be any wiggle room on this. We can try and be as creative as we want, but I think it is
when you say creative, what means is...
So it might be, for instance, the weekly salary is X, but there might be an additional amount for sitting on the bench. There might be an additional amount for playing games. There might be that there's certain bonuses at the end of the season if you've ticked certain boxes. So it's kind of finding a way so that you might hit that figure, but it's incentivized in a certain way. Because the chances are, like I say, had Carl Darlow got fit and gone back as a 2, you might not have then been sitting on the bench. So a lot of these incentives then move away. But at that point, you then sit as that number 3 on a number 3's salary. So they were looking at different ways like this where, effectively you could get to that figure, but you've got to...
structure it differently, basically, So then as the day's progressing, we're getting to about... I remember... so the big thing that stuck in my head was about 3 o'clock, you basically rung me back and said, listen, they can't do anywhere near what you're asking. They can't do that. They're willing to do this, but they can structure it differently. And I went, mate, it's cool, honestly. Don't even worry about it. Just say, listen, I'm not trying to hold your arm behind your back or anything like that. And we're not talking like Premier League striker wages here, by the way. We're talking good money, but you have to respect the contract. You have to, because it was incredible. And I got the feeling all the way through this, Newcastle actually were real top class about it all. They were really, really good. But they just weren't willing to meet those demands. So I've said to you, right, mate, that's cool, that's fine. And I remember you saying to me, well, we're going to have to walk away then. We're going to have to walk away. So at that point, what did you do then?
Yeah, I'll probably give a little bit more context here as well, because I was then, obviously I'd landed in the airport.
Yeah.
So this was like a scene. Do you remember the film Phone Booth? Yeah. Where the whole film was like, I basically spent 7 hours in the airport. I had a potential client coming to meet me, and I said to him early on, an hour before, I could already see what was going to happen. So I rang him. He was en route to meet me. I was like, look, I'm going to apologise in advance because I can already see how today's going to play out. So you can imagine I'm sat there giving a presentation to this lad and the phone rings again. I must have left him 6 times during that presentation to the lad. So it was a killer. Plus I was in the airport, couldn't get any reception on like WhatsApp because there was too many people in the airport. Phone was dying. I've had to walk like half a mile down the road sometimes to make some of these phone calls just to get away from the noise and everything. So the whole thing, it was like a scene from a film, my end. And then obviously I'm speaking to you, I'm speaking to Newcastle, and they got to a point where, it was a conversation with them to say, look, I think it is what it is. I don't think there's, as much as we, gone back and suggested a few different ideas, it's going to have to be that or nothing. It's very simple. It would have to be that or nothing. And then the phone went quiet for a long period of time. So I just assumed at that point that they'd moved on, which was fine.
Is that how it works? If a deal is dead in the water, it's not that they're being rude and they're just not getting back to you. It's just that they've got other stuff to do. Well, they've got a new client to try and get after.
There'll always be, with every single position, you see all the deals that happen, of course, there's always a hit list.
Yeah.
Like 1, 2, 3, 4. And it's like anything. It's like, okay, we want our number one, but at what point does it become silly to do that? Because look, the thing here is, look, Karius is obviously there now. There is a chance that he never plays a game for Newcastle.
Probably a high chance.
There's a high chance. I mean, it could have happened with yourself. So then it's a question of, as a club, as an ownership, are we willing to invest, from a business point of view, are we going to invest this amount of money for someone who might not even play a game? But then alternatively, and similarly, you've got the situation where what if Pope had got injured and you suddenly had to play 10 games? It's one where the Premier League being what it is now, that might be the difference of however many points.
Yeah, for sure.
Which in itself, so it's almost an insurance policy on one side of things, but it's then how much is that worth to you?
Yeah.
And I just felt at that point, I thought maybe, you never know, but maybe it's just gone a little bit too high. I did think they'd call back and give us the courtesy of just saying, look, we have decided to go elsewhere. But that phone call didn't quite go as I thought it would. Yeah,
so at this point then, the phone had gone quiet for maybe an hour or so. Mm-hmm. And then Newcastle rang you back. Mm-hmm. And how did that go?
It was interesting because it was, right, Rich, we'll hit the figure. However, what he did say, and again, we never really went into this detail because we didn't need to, but it was like we'll hit the figure, but there's going to be no accommodation. There's going to be no this, no this, no this. It was like, look, it is that.
Weekly wage, boom.
Weekly wage, boom, done. But there's nothing. And I was like, okay, well, that's what Ben said. Ben said if you get there, as far as I'm concerned. So at that point, I called you, but as well as calling you, I had to speak to my colleagues because I'd arranged for one of my colleagues to come up and meet me there. I was then looking to divert my flight. So I'd already looked and I had a flight ready to go from Dublin to Newcastle direct.
Sorry, mate.
Because I'd have had to go back to Stansted. I'd have landed about 12. I wouldn't have got to Newcastle 5 and your medical would have been at 9. Yeah. So I was like, no, it makes more sense to go to Newcastle. I can buy a shirt in the morning or whatever. I already planned it all out. Spoke to my colleagues. They were going to come meet me. And then, I gave you the call.
So the call basically went along the lines of Fozzy. I cannot believe this. I cannot believe this, but they're going to do it. They have agreed to do it. It is literally basic wage. You are not ever going to see any bonuses of any sort. But they've agreed to do it. And when you told me this, right, I can sense like he was buzzing, right, Tom? Honestly, he was buzzing. The excitement. He was so excited. Right? He was like, oh my God, I can't. They've done it. They've absolutely done it, right? So I'm there. I was actually sat outside. I had just started putting some coal on the barbecue outside, right? I just started putting some coal on my big green egg. And I was trying to light it because I've got like a blowtorch kind of thing. And the phone rang. So I've got like flame in this hand. And then you're ringing me going, they've done it. And instead of me going, yes, buzzing, right? Oh, mate, I had the worst. Oh, this feeling just went goom. Down into my belly, right? I've got goosebumps because I've just remembered it there. But this feeling of like absolute dread, went into my belly. And I was like, oh shit, I'm going to have to do it. So you're buzzing and I've gone, right, mate, give me half an hour, okay? And you've gone, sweet, see you in a minute.
Do you know what, though? Do you know, I did, but I've still got the text on my phone to show. So in my group, I then sent a text saying, this isn't done until it's done.
Really?
I sensed it the moment you hung up. Because even the fact you said, give me half an hour, I'm like, give you half an hour for what?
For what?
Like, I'm going to see you up there in a bit.
You've known him long enough, Rich, right?
I can sense it.
And unless he says, brilliant, yep, cool, done, sweet.
Yeah.
It ain't a deal, is it?
And you should see the responses from my colleagues. They're like, don't be silly, it's fine, blah, blah, blah. And I'm like, no, you don't know Ben. You don't know Ben. Oh. I know. So I had this slightest little inkling. I still thought at that point, of course you're going to...
Yeah, sure, yeah.
There were a lot of... And I know our next conversation, I'm sure you'll get onto, there were a lot of reasons for why it might have made logical sense, but I could just sense something in your tone of voice.
Yeah, so... so that half an hour turned into about an hour, really, And I had, at this point, dinner sort of like where it's sort of just sitting down for dinner. I'm in an hour in. At this point, I text Aaron Ramsdale to see what days off Eddie Howe normally gives, because it's important. Because if if I'm living up there, which is 4 hours away, which I'll have to live up there, I need to know that I can have basically 2 days off in a row so that I can come home and spend time with the family. That's important, really important. So he texted straight back and was like, Fozzy, mate, you won't get 2 days off in a row. You won't. He'll probably give you Sunday off, and if you're doing all right, he might give you a random day off in the week. But he'll never give you 2 days off. And that...
Am I blaming Aaron Ramsdale here? Is
basically,
that what we're saying?
Rambo, it's your fault, mate.
Send Rambo an invoice.
Yeah. So as soon as he got that text back to me, I thought, oh, that's not great. I don't like that. And then I rung one of my closest pals in football, Boaz Myhill. And so I'm talking to Bo, and I'm like, mate, I've had this incredible offer, blah, 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 blah. And Boaz is just laughing down the phone, right? And he's even told me an even better story, because he's in the car, with his daughter. He's just picked her up from netball at school, right? And I'm on loudspeaker, yeah? And I'm telling him these figures, and I'm telling him Newcastle, and he's just laughing. He's going, oh my God. He's going, you're 39 years old. This is, what on earth? Like, blah, 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 blah. And at one point, Boaz said to me, mate, listen, you got to do what you got to do. You go with your gut, he says, but it's a serious contract that you've got to respect, yeah? And then at the end, he's joking, saying, I can't believe you're going to turn this down. I can't believe you're going to turn X amount down. And he said, and I hung up, and Boaz said, my daughter, who sat next to me, who's 15, went, who's turning down this much money, Dad? And he's just laughing his head. I'm thinking, oh, God. But Boaz knows me as well, and he was like, listen, mate, it's an incredible offer, and it's a great chance, but if you don't want to do it, mate, you ain't going to do it. Do you know what I mean? And then I spoke to a few other people, this and that, and you rung me. Even Tom rung me, and he was like, right, we can go tonight, He says, I'll drive, because I was still banned from driving. I've just got my license back. I got banned from driving.
I had my bag packed.
Yeah, so he had his bag packed.
We were going up.
He was like, mate, we'll do it. It's fine. I'll drive you. I'll stay up there with you tonight. It's golden. Medical tomorrow, sweet as a nut. So anyway, I took all this advice off of everybody, and I'm sat there having dinner, right? Just started eating dinner. My God. And I'm talking to my wife, talking to my kids. I'm just like, no, I can't do it. I just can't do it. And this is the point when I phone you back, right?
Yeah. Well, this was it. You called back and you said that. And then I think I spent about 10 minutes unbroken trying to convince you or give you reasons as to why this makes sense. At which point you hung up. You then texted me, said, I think I'm coming round. Yeah. And then it was about another 10. But I knew at that point.
Done.
I knew just because I'd spoke to the guys I work with. I was like, I know Ben. I know that. And I don't know what you did in that period of time, because I think I actually sent you, and I've got a habit of doing this. I sent then about 10 bullet points.
Yes, you did.
I said about 10 bullet points. Says it's going to do this. Yeah. Also, there was a part of me I just felt once you got up there, you would have loved it. But do you know what the bit though, and again, this was probably afterwards, this hit me more than anything, was although it's a very different situation, I did the same thing when I retired. Yeah. I could have done another year or two. I was offered contracts, and actually I just wasn't feeling it. I had other stuff going on, and I was like, look, as much as financially it probably makes sense to do another year or two, just don't want to do it.
You
Life's
just know,
short.
right?
Yeah.
You just know, don't you? Like when you've had enough, and when like you just get that feeling of, no, I don't want to do this. Yeah. I don't want to do it. I'm a 39-year-old man. I know myself. I know my head. I know my body. Yeah, my body could have done it, but I wouldn't have had it in my heart. And that was the problem for me. I think I agree with you. If I'd have gone up there and I would have spent a few days in training, and I'd have met everybody, and it'd have been like being like normal. Do you know what I mean? It'd been like being at Watford or West Brom or whatever. I know I'd have enjoyed it. I know I would. But I didn't want it to get to that point. I just didn't want to do it, mate. Honestly, it filled with me with dread. And I've never felt that way before. Like anywhere in football, I've never felt that way before. And it just filled me with dread. So I remember you giving me all the bullet points. And I'm reading them going, oh, God's sake. Oh. And then I went, no, I'm not doing it. And mate, he was like, oh, it was the saddest voice I've ever heard in my life.
You know what?
It was horrible.
It was the most bizarre day, because it was, the only way I can describe it, I started the day and I finished the day in exactly the same place. Yeah. So in that I was eventually back at Stansted, back at home.
Emotionally drained, though.
It was just weird. I'm sat there and I'm like, yeah, this has just been the most bizarre day. Like whatever it was, 20 hours from start to finish, where I'm in exactly the same place. And I'm like, nothing's changed, yet I feel so deflated. Yeah. But then, there was that bit, and I touched on it there, where I kind of thought about it, because it's like, I can't be angry, because it's you for a start, which is really annoying.
You definitely were a little bit.
I was for a period of time, but it's annoying because it's you. So I can't really be angry. But then it was also, I came back to that thought. I was like, no, do you know what? In a weird way, I like this. Like, as much as, don't get me wrong, from a personal point of view and financially and whatever, fine. But actually from a point of view in terms of doing things for the right reasons.
Yeah.
I kind of then took a different perspective, and I actually genuinely, the next day I was absolutely fine. But yeah, that evening it wasn't, because it was just an emotional roller coaster from, out of nothing, suddenly something. And it was hours. 'Cause I mean, again, we probably, you can't really explain on a podcast like this, but it was hours. I must have spoke to you 15 times that day.
Easy.
And similarly, Newcastle. So it's just constant while juggling other things as well. So it was just an emotional roller coaster.
So this is the point. So I've made my mind up at this point. So this is where I rang you back. So I remember giving you the bad news, and it's like, no, mate, listen, I'm not doing this now. And you were like, yeah, okay. I then rang you straight back and said, listen, I'm going to ring Dan Ashworth, and I'm going to tell him myself, because Dan Ashworth, the chief exec, I know Dan anyway, and he's a top man, to be fair. He is a real top man. So that's when I rung him, and you know what? He was cool. He was honestly so cool. He was like, listen, mate, I really appreciate the phone call. It's a tough call to make. I understand it though, and I appreciate you ringing me now. He says, because if you'd have rung me tomorrow, I'd have been so pissed off. He said, because we'd have got medicals planned, like we're another day down. He said it would have absolutely pissed me off. He said, but I really do appreciate that. That was a bit of a bonkers day, wasn't it? It was nice to share it with you though. Do you know what I mean?
Really, well, I kind of thought when it was playing out, I thought it was going to be like, bearing in mind, it's 16 years ago that the Premier League year we played together. I thought it's going to be the lovely way to kind of round this all off. You know, how cool's that? That then 16 years later,
last ever contract potentially.
Yeah, and who knew the film had a big twist at the end?
Yeah, I know, it was gold.
You know what though, Rich? He's rang me after, because I was literally going, "Am I coming to your house or not?" I was like, because I was saying, "I'll be there in 20 minutes," kind of thing. And then you rang and went, "No, I'm not doing it." And then he said, "I've just turned down a job for X amount of pounds."
Yeah.
And something along the lines of, "So you got to make this fucking business work," or whatever. And I'm going, "Oh, wow."
It's a good job we have a nice time making podcasts and football content and stuff, isn't it? Because there's no way I could have turned it down otherwise. The fact that we are having, honestly, such a good time doing this and enjoying it, that honestly was what swayed me.
Was it really?
Yeah, it's mad, absolutely mad. Right, that's the Newcastle story, right? But I still want to talk about being a football agent, okay? Because we were talking at the beginning of the show, before the show, about when you mentioned the word football agent, right? Automatically, for probably most football fans, they conjure up this image of like a greasy suit,
wide boy.
Yeah, wide boy, suit laden, giving it the big spiel kind of thing. That's what comes up. Why is it like that? Why do people straight away think of that image?
There are stories out there. There are lots of stories, and it's a real tough one. And I had it myself, obviously, as a player, choosing agents, in that, the big word that comes up a lot is trust. Oh, you need to go for someone you trust. But it's more than that. Now, to go with an agent, you need to find someone who's had results and, trust. Because, look, ultimately, and this is where, and again, without going into too much detail, a lot of the time, a club offers a contract to a player. They'll obviously always go through the agent. Now, there are conversations that a player may never know about, and that's where this comes in and where the mistrust can come in, because there's lots of different agendas at play. And it's then, do they have the agenda of the player first and foremost? Do they want the best for you?
Basically, the best interests.
Best interests. Where it might be that a player's got 5 offers, and is the agent guiding them to one offer over another, and why are they doing that? That's where. So,
okay, this is I understand that. So if a player's got 5 offers and the agent knows about these 5 offers, if he is at that point then weaseling off and going, well, you pay me a bit more money to me, I'll bring him to you. Yeah.
And is that because he's representing the club as well?
Well, this is where, if it's done in its purest form, then it should be a case of, look, the agenda's always with the player.
Yeah, and it's open and honest.
It's open and honest. It's transparent. It's like, right, these are the 5 offers. These are what they're all offering. Of course, at that point, you give advice. I mean, one of the reasons I went into it, and I only deal with goalkeepers, nothing else. And the reason is that we've both been there between the sticks. I know what they're going through a lot of the time. And also the guiding of a player's career. Like, okay, this one might be more financially for you at this point, but actually I think your next step is better from this one. So you will then, if you're doing it correctly, be giving advice based on their future career. One of the big problems with agency is that, and again, people don't fully understand this, is that a player will have a contract with a club, but they'll also have a contract with an agent. Yeah. Now, the reason I mention that is that the question is the agent looking at the next 10 years, or are they just looking at the next 2 years while they're with that particular agent? Because there is always a chance that when that business relationship ends, they may join another agent. So this is where ideally the agent always has a long-term idea in mind for the player and not just the immediate, which might not necessarily suit the long term.
Is that because every time a player moves, that's where the new, or sort of even if he signs a new contract, for example, that's where he will get a new signing on fee, for example, and that's where the money will come from, basically.
So essentially, an agent ordinarily doesn't get paid until there is a new contract or a move.
Yeah.
So again, and sometimes you might sign a player for that 2-year period and there doesn't happen to be a new contract during that time. So you could work for them for 2 years and then they choose another agent. That's just the nature of the job. But again, with that being the nature of the job, then there is the possibility that certain agents might look to try and make something happen so that something does happen within those 2 years.
Yeah, that's the bit. I think that's the bit where agents get the bad name from, is because it's almost like they're rocking the boat on purpose. They're disrupting everything which is sensible and good for that player's career going forward and do it in a sensible way so that they can get a payday. And that's the bit that ruins it, isn't it?
It is, but do you know what I think? And I think it's changing. I do really think it's changing in that, because it only takes one of those stories and it spreads like wildfire. I'm sure, without naming names, I'm sure when you're in the changing room, you've got a good idea as to a lot of the agents out there. Some have got great reputations, some not so good. And I think the ones that are not so good, they're soon finding their way out of the game anyway. Yeah. And I do think the better agents will...
Well, that's why a lot of players now have family represent them, don't they? Which it'd be interesting to see what your take is on the Rich, because it can be good. Because obviously you'd think most of the time,
the trust,
not
element.
all of the time,
sure.
Because there have been instances that they've got the best interests of the player at heart, but at the same point, are they that connected person?
Well, this is the bit, because I think some people, you wouldn't necessarily think, you think of it in a real basic level, oh, anyone could be an agent, but then I guess that's the bit, and we'll no doubt go into it, the stuff that you do behind the scenes. I know there's no one that can match me in the goalkeeping world, for instance. And that's, for instance, being in touch with all 92 goalkeeper coaches, or the different header recruitments, or having spreadsheets, knowing exactly who's going where, what each person's on, contract-wise, length-wise, who are free transfers this summer. If they go there, who's the right fit for there, knowing goalkeeping, knowing a goalkeeper's game, which goalkeeper fits which team, having those conversations way in advance. And as much as a family member, you might have the trust, which is where, look, you do need the trust. If they haven't got those contacts, then really you're just waiting for the phone to ring. And there are a lot of agents out there that do that. That, look, if I represent you, I could just sit there and at some point the phone will ring because you're Ben Foster. But if it's your 18-year-old who's desperate for a loan into the National League, that phone isn't going to ring, yet that could be the loan that helps make their career.
Yeah. That's it. I think that's the behind the scenes things that people don't see. I think everybody just sees the big agents, the ones doing the moves where it's like, it's fallen into their lap, basically, isn't it? It's like they don't really have to do much work for it. Do you know what I mean? The clubs want this player anyway, so it's like basically just how much are you going to pay us? And it's literally that. And they're taking how much money are agents making? So, like, say a big deal, for example. So Erling Haaland signs for Man City in the summer. Who did his deal? Was it his dad? Was it his an agent or what?
I'd say it would have been Ryla, but obviously Ryla, I don't know, because he's passed now. I don't know if he's passed at that point.
At what point do the club say, well, we're not going to pay you this money or we're going to pay you that money? Can he name his price, for example? Do you know what I mean? If he's taking a player for 60 million quid, how much would an agent make off of a deal like that?
Ordinarily, it's 5%. That's the
standard,
and it would normally be on behalf of the player. And without getting too geeky about it, there's an HMRC side of this where that becomes on like a benefit in kind for the player, and then potentially it could be done as what's called a tripartite agreement, where an agent can work on behalf of the player and on behalf of the club. Yep. And then what the club decides to pay the agent is essentially up to them. But ordinarily,
it could be anything.
It could be. I mean, for the bigger players, and this is where, as you say, that's the bit you'll see in the press, is the big numbers that are banded around. And that might be where, and ordinarily there is transparency with the player, but when it's on behalf of the club, it doesn't necessarily impact the player. But you'd like to think in a perfect world, and in most of these situations, they'll be aware as to what the agent's getting. And I'm assuming for the likes of an Erling Haaland, etc., they'll be okay with it if they know that they're getting the deal that they want.
So then the tripartite, when an agent's working on a tripartite agreement, so he's working on behalf of the club and behalf of the player, that is the bit that can get murky. That is the bit where the agent can start to go, right, I want 20 million quid from this. And he can actually legally go and say that to a club.
I mean, I'm saying this without having been in that situation. We haven't got Erling Haaland. But no, at that point, that's
you wouldn't have him anyway, mate. You only do goalkeepers.
Only do goalkeepers. Right?
But at this point, though, could there not be a bit of conflict with the player saying, you've got 10 mil here, surely that should be going into my contract?
Yeah. Yeah, in
This is
short,
where
they
the
can.
trust
because,
bit.
because this is where, and again, you mentioned sort of the number of deals. I think I've been involved. Well, in fact, I know I've been involved in 55 over the last 4 windows. So the last 2 years, 55 goalkeeping deals.
Wow.
But like we would never go, or we would never go to those levels because it's you kind of know where the levels are and where the limit is almost.
Yeah.
And it is that transparency again. Because I guess there's different thought processes behind this. I want to be doing this for the next 25 years. So for me, I want to continue to build the reputation that I'm building, keep doing the job that I'm doing. There's some great examples out there because as much as we talk about these huge ones, you've then got like Aaron Ramsdale, we spoke about a lot, I feel today. Great example for what he's doing now. Really, it was the loan to Chesterfield, where they ended up getting relegated. He makes a mistake in his first game. I remember it well, but he did brilliantly on that loan. Goes to Wimbledon, where they're in the relegation zone, helps them stay up, and he was an absolute hero for them. That is effectively what gave him his chance at Bournemouth, which has then led to what we see now.
Built him into the all-round goalkeeper.
Built him into it, and people don't necessarily see that loan to Chesterfield or Wimbledon. A lot of people won't know about it, but that's what's allowed it to be what it is now. And of course, when you've got, and I guess this is where it's like a lot of different businesses, when you've got an asset of that size, or you've got an asset like an Erling Haaland, then of course you having that on your client list is
a massive draw.
And this is where you place them as well. So how important for you in your job, how important is finding that asset that potentially is going to be England number one and putting them in the right home?
Yes.
Wimbledon on loan, Chesterfield on loan, for example.
Oh, huge. I mean, so this summer, I want to say it was 10 or 11 loans I did. And again, no one will know any of them because it was 2 into National League, 2 into League Two, 1 into SPL, a couple into the Conference South, 1 into the one below that. No one will know about any of them. And that's understandable that they wouldn't. However, again, as a goalkeeper, it's that catch-22. Every manager wants a goalkeeper with experience. Yeah. Where are they going to get that experience? So we're having to then, and that's, I think, probably the hardest bit, but the most important bit is working with managers at that level to be like, look, I've seen him play. I know what level he can be. He could be a Championship Premier League goalie. I promise you he'll come into you and do a really good job. And that's where you build the trust with a lot of the non-league managers. But yeah, sometimes it's the biggest things. And you look at, well, in fact, you look now in the Premier League, the ones that are playing, Rob Sanchez was it Forest Green, Rochdale, and now he is where he is. Aaron Ramsdale we touched on. Dean Henderson did every league.
Nick Pope,
Jordan Pickford did the same, the loan journey.
Thing,
I mean, you even did the loan journey.
Same thing,
back in the day.
That's where you learn it. That's where you learn the basics, the kind of like playing where there's like 1,000 fans. Or
is it more important?
Everybody.
Is it more important as a goalkeeper?
I would say so.
Goalkeeper,
and I'd say it's
massive.
I'd say it's harder the lower you go.
Yeah.
So I think you're playing, suddenly you haven't got the incredible stadium to protect you from the elements. You haven't got the great players in front of you that are going to get you out of trouble. You're not playing on carpet. You might be playing on a Tuesday night, a horrendous pitch. You can hear the 3 people behind you that are screaming at you.
Yeah.
And actually to play, and then you lose 1-0, you make a mistake. It's so demoralising. So you see lads actually struggle on a Conference South loan, but go and do well in the Championship. Yeah. So I think for a goalkeeper to go and tick that box early on and make your way up the levels. It's from memory, because you went on obviously a couple of loans. Am I right in saying one didn't work out brilliantly, but then the next worked out really well?
Went Kidderminster, played 2 games, got recalled because we lost 1-0 and 4-0, had a stinker.
Yeah.
But then spent the next sort of 6 months going out on loan to Tiverton Town. You went to Stafford Rangers, just anywhere that would have me to go and play. Like even Bristol City, I went as a number 2 just so I could be in and around the first team. But you learn stuff along the way. That's the beauty of it. It gives you this grounding so that when you go back and then, like I was still 19, 20 at the time, but your body's still putting itself together at that point as well. Do you know what I mean? The dots haven't quite connected all the way through yet. So as long as you can learn a bit as you go, and then when it connects up, hopefully it might make sense. That's the beauty of it all. But I do think, I agree with you, what you said there a minute ago about goalkeepers. I think it's a really, really niche position where when it comes to having an agent, my agent, Vince, he was a goalkeeper. He used to play for Blackburn back in the day. And so I always knew that he could see it from my perspective better. You know what I mean? He could see when it came time to be contract negotiations, mate, this is a place for you. It fits, you know what I mean? It works. You're doing really well. The club, blah, blah, blah. Or if it was a move, fantastic opportunity. No, not necessarily that though. Don't do that. Would you recommend to goalkeepers out there that their agent should have some sort of like career having played the game, or even if they're like a semi-pro goalkeeper or something like that?
I do. I think it's more the fact that the outfield market is completely different to the goalkeeping market.
Is it really?
So if you're an agent with outfield players, you're effectively having to do 2 jobs if you're going to focus on goalkeepers too.
Yeah.
So yeah, my advice would be, whether it's myself or there's a few others out there that look after just goalkeepers, I'd always recommend them, because I think, look, I know I spend 16 hours a day just on the goalkeeping market, I couldn't even dream to think of starting on the outfield. I just haven't got any free time in the day.
Yeah.
So given that I'm spending that much time purely on that, you would need someone to be able to do that in order to do it effectively.
Yeah. So basically what you're saying then is all these like agents who have got goalies and outfield, they're all blaggers basically. They don't watch any of their games.
Exactly what he just said.
Yeah, they're just winging it.
No,
and going, yeah, you were amazing, mate.
Do you know what I'd say? This is going to sound really, I want this to come across the right way, but effectively agents are selling a product. So each player is a product. So do you know exactly what you're selling? Yeah. So like, for instance, something I do, I watch every single kick of every single player, every single game. I'll go on Y Scout or I'll watch, I said to you before the show, I have on a Saturday, I've got a way in which I can watch 8 games live at one time. I've got my own like Soccer Saturday studio.
That sounds hard work,
you know.
by the way.
I have 400 Google alerts on my phone for every different goalkeeper in the country. Oh so in the morning, it takes me an hour to go through all the goalkeeping news, just in case there is a rumour that such and such might join somewhere. Well, I need to find out if that's true, because then there's going to be an opening, and I've got 3 ideas or 2 ideas.
There's always a knock-on effect, isn't there? There's always a ripple effect afterwards.
Big jigsaw. And sometimes it won't necessarily be, this is the other part, is that I might have 3 ideas for that role. I might not represent any of those 3, but actually, if one of them goes in there, again, that might free up this space. I've got the perfect candidate.
But it's consultancy. I guess if a club, as diligent as you are, a club goes, do you know, we're in a bit of a spot, Rich might not represent them, but it'll give us a steer on someone.
So that's why, in fact, even with Monday, I've got literally 2 today. Good examples, 2 lads that aren't mine, aren't ones I work with, but the clubs have called me, Rich, we need this profile for this amount of time. And I've said, look, I know, and I've got a goalkeeping spreadsheet, I know the free agents out there, he'd be perfect for you, he'd be perfect for you. And touch wood, they've actually both gone through, which is great. But again, that then also builds more credibility with the club, because I'm not always necessarily, I would never do it. This is the other thing, going back to the idea of them being a product. Because again, if you get it wrong, or if I do something based purely on, I want to get them into a club, if they're not feeling it, and maybe I'm not feeling it, and we put them into that club and it doesn't go well, then you can burn relationships, because if they have got trust in my expertise or our expertise, and we've just put someone in there for the sake of putting in, they're taking our word, which by the way, most clubs won't go on that. You know, they'll do their own due diligence, of course, but certainly the clubs, non-league in particular, a lot of the time they are like, come on, you got to help us out. We haven't got the resources to go and scout this goalkeeper 10 times.
You need to hang your hat on it as well. So if you're recommending somebody and they take that like plunge and go for it, you got to think non-league teams as well. They haven't got a big budget. If they're taking that goalkeeper has to work. Like, do you know what I mean? They can't go and get him and then go, oh God, we're going to have to go and get another one because this one ain't work. That kills them, doesn't it? So you have to hang your hat on it. A question I want to ask is sort of how high maintenance are players? Do you know what I mean? Like what else do you have to do for players? Is it just a simple case of doing the transfers, doing a new contract renewal, all that kind of stuff, or is there other things that come with it?
So it's interesting. For all the lads I work with, they're all very different. So I've got a handful that will call me every time they play a game in the morning, just to have a quick chat, quick pep talk. I'll have one lad that calls me every Monday afternoon. I know, 3:00, I'm getting a call from this particular lad. I've got one that I haven't spoke to for a while, but we just do voice notes. Yeah. Just do voice notes back and forth, just pure WhatsApp. So it's always according to the player. You know, I'm not going to say this is how I am, this is how I operate, because, if it's not you, it's not you. The bit that most want to know is when it comes to the time where they do need their move or they need their new contract, is that you're on it and you know exactly where that potentially could be. And I guess that's where I would pride myself, is being, even now, we're only in October, I've already got a good idea as to who are going to need goalkeepers come next summer.
Yeah, sure.
So already I can start to plan really, really early, because there's nothing like, so it's like that one, you have an exam the next day and you do your revision last minute. You know, it brings the fear of God into me, the idea that suddenly we get to the summer and you've got a handful of lads that are desperate. And again, it's livelihood. You know, we talk about it. This summer just gone, there was a lot of lads that needed those moves. And each day that you get closer to August, suddenly August 1st comes around, they're not getting paid anymore.
Oh, nervy time. That
really
is
nervy time.
Yeah.
So it is one that you build the relationship according to them. I think we use the word again, transparency, integrity. You've got to do it in such a way where it's, look, I can't come to every game you're going to play. I'm not going to promise you things that I can't do. But what I will do is watch every single moment that you have, and I'll know you inside out, so that when I'm presenting you someone, I'll give you the best possible chance. That's a big thing that I'll try and present to them. But in terms of that relationship, it has to be according to them. And if you don't live up to expectations, the other part is that it is a business relationship. As much as you build a friendship naturally with your agent, there might be a point where you do let them down, again, touch wood, it doesn't happen too often. But if that does happen, then yeah, sometimes you will have players leave you if you don't necessarily, if you're not able to live up to the task.
So you're not the guy that's going to go and sort out their washing machine when it breaks and go and get their car serviced and all that kind of stuff.
Do you know what? You've got, let me think, what have I had some of the funniest things? You might do it, and that's where a lot of agencies will collaborate with a concierge company.
Yeah, sure.
So then you'll often just palm it off onto the concierge company. But yeah, no, certainly if a player's moving as well, moving to a different club, then it might be that you're getting a driver to pick them up and take them somewhere. You're kind of helping them locally with the place they might live. I'm sure I've got a couple of good ones for you. They'll probably come to me later in the show. I'll let you know. But you do get some, it tends to be that then you become, a point of contact for pretty much everything, which is fine because again, the age we are, we've experienced a lot of things, and if it is your general day-to-day things, there'll probably be someone you can put them in touch with.
Yeah, I love it.
I was going to ask you what you do, kind of how busy is it outside of the transfer window, but
I know.
you pretty much answered it's staying on top of things.
Do you know what? It can be as much or as little, is the truth, because look, as soon as September 1st comes around, you could literally just sit there, you've got your client list, and just wait for the phone to
And there are guys out there that do that. There've got to be. There are, for sure.
Well, that's it. And there'll be some that will take a long period of time off, September, October, quiet months, gets a little bit busier in November. So the bit that I've realised, I've sort of periodised my year to an extent where I know that in the summer, I'm the most boring man you'll ever meet. I sit behind my desk from May, June, July, August, and I'm literally 16 hours a day, got my classical music on in the background, and I am just on it.
He's changed it. Back in the day, he was giving it large in Watford. I remember going out with you.
Some sort of old man you are. How old are you, 39?
We're the same age. You know we're the same age. I know I look younger, but...
No, you're great. You're miles off it. You've changed, mate. You used to be a little party raver. Now you got your classical music.
Classical
Guaranteed
music.
You've got like a green tea, peppermint tea or something like that.
I need the caffeine.
And that's it, though.
Caffeine.
You are literally plotted up and you are studying.
I wake up at 4 a.m, literally, and because I think as well, like that period of time in the year for an agent, the best agents out there, that's it. That's where, also, let's be crude about this, that's where you make your money.
Yeah.
For an agent, you've got to get the right deals, the best deals for your clients. So those 4 months, I'm tuned in. Now, look, this is a great time of the year, really, because September, October, that might be where I'll look at the client list and, okay, can we add 1 or 2 more? If so, what kind of level? Who's out there that maybe didn't get a move that should have got a move? So it might be that we then approach a few lads and just find out if they're happy with their representation. So September, October, November tend to be those months. Then again, November, December, building up to January, which is a reactive market. So it's not one that you'll necessarily plan for because you can't. As of this moment now, everyone should be happy with their goalkeepers. Yeah. But when we get to November, December, you'll get some injuries, maybe a few lads that aren't performing too well. So then you'll look to react to that in January. And then again, September, March, April, certainly February, March, are very quiet months. And then it starts to get busy again.
Well, you do a bit with MLS, don't you?
Yeah. Yes, I mean, like this summer, took a lad to Belgium, Ireland, Scotland, Sweden, Australia, America.
Wow.
So that wasn't the intention, but I've got a few conversations at the moment with MLS clubs for potentially other lads to go
just
there.
keep the door open for him.
Well, spoke to an MLS club in regards to Ben.
Another one I let you down on.
Yeah, that's right.
Another one I let you down on.
Another happy day.
Keep the door open for March, all right?
Yeah, okay. No, on a serious one, that's one that, and I know we touched on it, and look, you guys have got a great thing going on here, but yeah, of course, if you wanted to go there,
MLS would be a banger, wouldn't it?
That's
I think.
one.
Do you know what? I've seen a lot of people actually saying, you'd be open up to a move to MLS, but not to Newcastle yet. And I'm thinking, no, because it's a different thing. It's still a family thing. Where if I was to go and do the MLS, I would take the family out. The family would come with me, and we would live out there, and we would give it a go. Do you know what I mean? We'd try and live that lifestyle for a little bit. But when you're moving up to Newcastle, I can't just take the kids up to Newcastle. Do you know what I mean? They're in school, they're settled, sort of thing. It's not a big enough move to sort of do that. Yeah. So it is a different thing. If an MLS offer came up, honestly, still even now, I'd genuinely be like, well, I'd have to have a look at that just for the pure lifestyle.
Not as in big enough move as in it was to the end of the season. So obviously Newcastle are a whopper, aren't they? Massive.
Exactly, yeah.
But for a short-term contract,
a few months,
you couldn't do it.
I mean, I went over. So Jonathan Bond, I won't name too many lads, but Jonathan Bond, who I took to the Galaxy, let you guys down actually, didn't he?
He did. Bondi, cheers, mate.
Yeah,
came all the way out to LA to see you to do a podcast and forgot basically. We were sat there in the studio just chilling, going, Ben, do you want to ring Bondi and just make sure he's all right? And I was like, he'd be fine.
Who was in control of this, by the way? You or Ben? You were. Oh, okay. No, because if it was you, bearing in mind that you gave me directions for here today and he gave me directions to his house, Gave me the wrong postcode.
No, don't worry about that. You know,
They're similar
it's
postcodes,
fine.
to be fair.
Close enough.
They're very similar postcodes.
Ben was. I was a little bit more annoyed than Ben was, but it didn't matter.
It didn't matter.
We were. It was a bonus pod, so we were fine.
Do you know what I say though? So I went over and watched him, and
Yeah.
obviously in terms of the environment, you'd love it, like because you get to the stadium, it's a very different feel to a Premier League game, going to an MLS game, going to the Galaxy. So much going on outside, weather's beautiful, the atmosphere within the place, just a nice, friendly atmosphere.
An event,
and actually, keep saying it for years. It's getting bigger and bigger and bigger, and they're only investing more and more money into it.
Jonathan's loving life over there, isn't he?
Been brilliant.
Doing
Just made the playoffs. They have. He got man of the match in the last
Fantastic.
game to help him make the playoffs. He's doing really well.
Rich, like banging podcast, mate. Honestly, I've genuinely like intriguing to know the world of agency. And first of all, I'm not blowing smoke up your ass, but it seems like you're one of the good ones, and it's lovely to see because goalies should look after ourselves. We genuinely should, and it's good to know that you are out there doing it for the goalies.
Maybe you should sign one of his deals then.
Yeah, I know. Stop letting it
That'd
down.
be lovely,
basically.
wouldn't it?
Yeah, stop letting it down.
I mean, I just had to remove that down payment.
He's been turfed out his house.
He got a little
He's
bit.
had to give
I
back
know.
his Porsche.
We're talking about him on a podcast. We spoke about him in my retirement pod. He's killing it, all right. How would a player go about finding an agent? Do you know what I mean? How can a player go and get an agent that he can trust and find one that's going to work for him?
Tough. It's ordinarily the other way around. The agents will find you.
Yeah.
That's what you tend to find. And there's always ways and means. What often happens is word of mouth, and you'll certainly find that in the changing room. From my point of view, and I guess I try to do it a little bit differently, and I'm quite targeted in terms of lads I would like to speak to. It'll always be ones that I rate, ones that I'll watch play, and I'll go through all their footage. And if I like them, then I'll try and find a way to at least ask the question. It's one of them where they might be, and always be really respectful, because if they are happy, I'll always say to them, well then, look, if you're happy, it's quite difficult sometimes to find a good agent. So by all means, stick with your agent and crack on. If there's any sign that maybe they're not and that their contracts run out or running out, then we'd look to have a conversation and go from there. The other bit that I've looked to do, and again, I'll give away a few of my secrets now so others can follow, is copy by all means, is Instagram for me has been really powerful.
Really?
Like, I know you guys use social media well, but it's one that, you know, as an agent, you've got a certain brand. And I want to get that brand across as to what I stand for, my values, ethics, etc. And if that aligns with you as a goalkeeper, then great. If it doesn't, then I'm not for you.
Yeah, brilliant. It's as simple as that. I think as a footballer nowadays, I think most of it is done on word of mouth, and it is on finding somebody that fits for you because you trust them, because they've got your best interests. It's not that easy to do all the time, but I get the feeling you're one of the good ones, mate. So banging, really good podcast, mate. Really enjoyed that. Really like interesting to know all the behind the scenes and the workings of it, all that kind of stuff. Richard Lee, absolute brilliant as usual, mate. We finish off. I'm going to look into that camera, then Tom will furnish me. Ready?
Finish
me. Follow me. And we say up the Fozcast.
Up the Fozcast.
Up the Fozcast.
There you go. Well done, mate. Well done, mate.
Very good.
Good job. Leave me hanging.
Stuff.
Thanks everybody for watching. We hope you enjoyed the latest episode of the Fozcast. Don't forget to give us a follow on Spotify. Up the Fozcast.